Welcome to the Boulder Criminal Lawyer Podcast with Janene McCabe. I'm your host, Elena Nicole. In this podcast, we'll break down the criminal justice process and answer the questions many people have, but often don't know where to ask. From what criminal defense attorneys actually do, to what happens during an investigation or arrest, or how cases are built and defended in court. Janene McCabe is a criminal defense attorney and skilled courtroom litigator who has taken nearly 100 cases to trial, representing clients in municipal, county, and district courts. Janene, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about assault charges. What are the three types of assault?
So in Colorado, there is first, second, or third degree assault. Third degree is the lowest level of assault and first degree is the highest. With third degree assault, you're really talking about knowingly or recklessly hitting another person. So there, think about you're swinging a bat, right? And you're just not paying attention to somebody else in the area and you hit them with a bat. That could be third degree assault. And let's say it didn't cause a lot of injury other than maybe they said, ow, I felt pain. That's third degree assault. Second degree assault could be causing serious bodily injury. That could be a fracture, a scar. Let's say you think about the movies and somebody takes a beer bottle and they start a fight and they hit another person with that beer bottle. That's second degree assault because maybe you've caused a injury like a broken bone, or maybe you've caused a scar, but you've also now picked up a beer bottle, which could be used as a deadly weapon. And then first degree assault is the most serious. That's usually you did use a deadly weapon, like a beer bottle could be a deadly weapon, and you caused serious bodily injury, like maybe you sliced them open and now they're going to need stitches. So that's the most serious of the three types of assault cases.
As a criminal defense attorney, which do you see most often?
I would say most often I see third degree assault and second degree assault. So most often third degree assault, a push, a shove, a slap, a hit, those are your third degree assault cases. And then you have second degree assault where maybe somebody used an instrument to hurt somebody else, but it didn't cause serious bodily injury.
And what factors usually raise or lower the degree of an assault charge?
It's really going to depend on the level of injury. How severely was the other person injured? Was it just a bruise or just said that hurt? Or was it serious bodily injury where they required medical treatment, whether it was stitches or whether it was a broken bone?
And how do prosecutors attempt to prove intent or injury?
With assaults, like third degree assault is reckless, right? You didn't intend to hurt somebody, but you did something that was reckless and that they did get hurt. Whereas second degree assault and first degree assault, it's you meant to hurt someone and you did hurt someone.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk domestic violence cases.
In Colorado, domestic violence is an act or a threatened act of violence against an intimate partner. It can also be a act against persons or property. So, for example, if you're having an argument with your spouse and you throw a plate across the room, that could be criminal mischief as an act of domestic violence if it's done with the intent to harass, annoy, alarm the other person. And so domestic violence isn't always physical against the other person. It could also be something like damage to property, but with the intent to scare the other person.
That's interesting. And what relationships or situations usually lead to these kinds of charges?
So they call it somebody that you've had an intimate relationship with. So it could be your current spouse, your ex-spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be even somebody that you just hooked up with, but you had an intimate relationship.
And what immediate consequences can follow an accusation?
Well, so domestic violence in particular, it's not its own charge, it's a sentence enhancer. And so if you are charged with an act of domestic violence, you may also be charged with third degree assault. And then if you're found guilty of something involving domestic violence, it can have serious implications, including anyone who is charged or I should say convicted of something with domestic violence automatically loses their Second Amendment gun rights. And so that could be a really big implication if you are a person who needs to carry a weapon for work, or if you're an avid hunter or sportsman.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the best defense for domestic violence?
A lot of times with domestic violence, you're talking about some serious emotional dispute that's going on. So sometimes I've had clients where maybe they've been living under a cloud of fear from their partner for a long time, and they've just been too afraid to say anything or do anything, and then it erupts into an argument that turns physical. And so we want to first talk about who started this argument? Who is actually the victim in this particular case? And a lot of times that's the first thing that you're going to want to look into. I think there is a stereotype that men are always the abusers and that women are always the victims, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what kind of evidence tends to matters most in these types of cases?
What's really going to matter is, does what the witness say line up with the physical evidence, right? Too many times you see cases where both parties have injuries and only one party gets arrested. And so you're really going to want to look at, well, what injury, what's the extent of the injury? Was a weapon used or not? Is it a push? Is it a shove? Is it more serious? And then look at, what are the possible defenses for your client? Are they just simply defending themselves, and that their former partner is the one who actually started it and put them in danger where they had to defend themselves?
What steps should someone take right after an allegation is made?
Right after an allegation is made is, first, always start by exercising your right to remain silent. Don't talk to anyone, not your spouse. Don't make apologies. If they start texting you and asking you, do you feel bad about what happened? Don't talk to them about it. Instead, reach out to that lawyer, the criminal defense lawyer, and start putting everything in their hands as soon as you possibly can.
And what or how can someone prove innocence in a domestic violence case?
There are a number of ways. Sometimes it's showing that the allegations themselves are not possible. If somebody is saying, oh, they came to my house and they pushed me, and you can demonstrate that, in fact, you were not at that location. So sometimes it's, does the physical evidence actually add up? That's the first thing that we're going to talk about. And then the second thing is, how exactly did this start? How did it finish? And does it actually fit the narrative of what the allegation is?
Makes a lot of sense. And what evidence can challenge or contradict an allegation?
The physical evidence is one of the things that you will always look at to see if it does, in fact, challenge the evidence. And then the second is, are there other witnesses? Like, did anybody else see this allegation or hear it? I've certainly had clients that were on a phone call when their significant other started an argument with them that then turned physical. And so sometimes you want to see, like, what did this other person on the other end of the line, what did they hear? And can they be a good witness for you?
How important are timelines, messages, witness statements?
Timelines can be critical to figure out exactly when something happened and did it go down the way that the state is alleging that it went down. You really want to look at, we have so much data anymore. You know, you could be wearing a smartwatch. Maybe your smartwatch says when you were at a location, when you left that location. That could be really crucial evidence and help to develop that timeline and solidify it, in terms of, it's not just your memory of what happened, but there may be some support for it. And so we want to take a look at all of those technologies that you use, and do they help support your defense?
Yeah. And then on the other side of it, what is weak evidence in domestic violence cases?
You know, weak evidence usually is in the form of, it's witness only. There is no physical evidence to support what the person is saying, and maybe they've given a lot of contradictory statements. And so we really want to work on, how do we challenge what this witness says, and what is their motivation? What is their bias as to why they're making this allegation against you?
What are some red flags that you've seen appear in police reports?
You know, a lot of times you're going to see a red flag where there's a police who held on to a person for too long, right, to do their investigation. And it moved from an investigatory stop into a heightened level of stop. And then the police didn't read somebody their rights. And they actually had placed a person under arrest, but tried to claim it wasn't an actual arrest. And so you want to look at the length of time. What did the officer do? What did the officer say? What did the client have an opportunity to do? So you really want to focus on looking at that body-worn camera footage from that arrest, of exactly what did that officer do? What did they say? And how long did it take?
Yeah. And what if there is no physical evidence? How does the absence of that affect the case? Or does
You know, it can. It depends on the case. There are certainly cases that go to trial where there is zero physical evidence to support what the allegation is. And so then you're really going to have to work on, what is the credibility of this witness who is making this allegation, and why should the jury not believe the allegations? And so that's when you're really going to want to do a lot of digging into the background of, you know, the relationship and the background of this individual making the allegation. Why here? Why now? And why should the jury believe them? And what can we do to show the jury shouldn't believe them?
how do you determine the credibility of someone?
Yeah, that's a really tough thing to try and do. And a lot of that has to go with, what's their background and experience, right? Where are they coming from in terms of making this allegation, right? Are they a person who's an eyewitness but wears glasses and wasn't wearing it that day? Are they credible? So there's a lot of factors that you have to get to know the case and get to know the witnesses to figure out where the weaknesses might be in their credibility.
Yeah. And how are domestic violence cases investigated?
Domestic violence cases are investigated by asking a lot more questions of the witnesses than maybe in other cases. There's actually a domestic violence evaluation form. The police officer might walk through with the alleged victim, ask them a number of questions about where they were hurt, if they've ever been hurt in the past, the nature of the past acts. All of that is kind of the investigation that the police are going to be doing from day one as soon as they are called about an act of domestic violence. And if they're called out to a scene and they make a determination that there is probable cause, then someone is getting arrested. They don't have the ability to just say, okay, you guys separate, calm down. They have to arrest somebody, and that person has to go to jail and see a judge before they can make a bond argument and try and get released.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Janene. This has been such a great conversation about criminal defense, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.